Welcome everyone to the Michael Fremer Show. Ta-da! We have produced.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Michael has flown all the way out here, and
I walked, actually.
you walked.
I walked.
That's why you're in such great
Good shape.
shape.
That's true.
Your arms aren't tired.
And he brought his latest record release, which he's going to play, and he spent last night going through the K-Fog collection. And so, in case you may not know, my name is Leslie Lundeen. I'm the president of the Audiophile Foundation, and I wanted to just recognize Gregory here before we start for having spent how many hours?
Probably 25.
25 hours so far. He's not done yet, going through the K-Fog collection. And there's some really fun stuff. We brought what we had priced. So we have like 4,000 records, and it's just taken so long just to pick out the ones at price. But in general, Michael can talk a little bit about what he's found when he's gone through them. And they are for sale. And if you do want to purchase any, just talk to me and I can do that. This is going to show up on YouTube. So just be aware of that.
You can talk over me and heckle me all you want, because I'm used to that. I've done stand-up comedy in front of two people, and it's not a problem.
But just know that whatever you say may show up on the internet.
That's fine.
At some point.
And what I say is going to show up on the internet too, right? So that's
Yes,
a big problem for me.
absolutely. Just so you understand a little bit about this system, it's a little bit of a work in progress. So they had a system here, which is they have the Mac amp and these Ampex speakers, which have a very unique sound.
It's a euphemism for they suck.
We got donated to us just like last week these beautiful Liquid speakers, which we did not have time to set up. But hopefully in future events, they will be set up and they will sound fantastic. And so as you come to events here, this system is going to be morphing into a really amazing system, and then we're also going to work with them on the acoustics of the room because it's very loud right now. So, and also if if anybody wants to donate anything, we're happy to take donations to upgrade the system.
You can see they're really short of stuff here.
We need very particular things. Like this is my turntable, which is not the best turntable of all, but it's the Traveler. It's good for traveling. But we do actually need a turntable.
And it traveled here to play records
It did
for you.
travel
So.
here. It's done its job.
Yeah.
So, okay, without further ado, I will introduce Michael Fremer.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Hello, everybody. Hello. So we can talk about a whole lot of things, and one thing we can talk about is old records, which are fun, or we can talk about the new records that I am involved with, which I definitely want to talk about with you, these here, which we will talk about and play. And then I want to start with talking about how I'm slowly learning, thanks to JR over there, that everything I've ever told people about how to set up a turntable is probably wrong. Everything. Everything. Like right now, I am reviewing a turntable with an 8-inch underhung arm and no offset angle. So if you move the arm across to the spindle, it misses the spindle by about that much. This should sound horrible. It's terrible, but it sounds fantastic. It's wonderful. So now I'm learning from this guy why that may sound wonderful, and why everything else I've ever told people, why skating happens, why all these things happen, are not true. In fact, the last thing that happened, there was a big debate online about loading moving coil cartridges, where it was proven that when you change the load of a moving coil cartridge, it doesn't change anything. They proved it with numbers. But we hear a difference, and they say the difference is something else that we don't know yet, but we're working on it. So that's the fundamental thing that we all thought was true. And then the other thing that I wanted to show you, this is something that Mr. Boyclair sent me. And this is a cantilever, and this is the line contact stylus, and you can see the two contact points on either side, and it says 82.21 degrees. It should be 90 degrees. And virtually every cartridge that you've ever bought, I don't care how much you spent on it, has, if it's got anything other than a spherical or an elliptical stylus, it's going to be off by, it could be perfect, but it's not likely. It could be off by, what are your numbers? 2 to 6
Well, the average zenith there is a hair over 2.5 degrees. For the Japanese styluses, it's a little bit over 3 degrees.
2.5 or 3 degrees, but some are worse. Some are worse.
Up to 17.5.
And so what that means is every time I've done a turntable setup seminar, I've told people, so what you do is you turn off your anti-skating and you set the cantilever to be parallel to the hash marks on your setup geometry device, and then you've got your zenith angle set correctly and you can move on to the next thing. But now we know that none of that is true because it's likely going to be off by a certain amount. And that's very depressing. So now, you can send if you spend a lot of money on a cartridge, you can send it to him and he can send you back this report and show you how much you have to tilt it to make it correct, which is a good thing. So if you spend $200 on a cartridge, you're not going to send it to him and spend whatever he's charging now to do this. But if you spend $5,000 on a cartridge, it's a good idea. And he should be hiring a lot of young people to do more of this because we need to do that. So and the irony of this is there are people buying these tangential tracking tone arms, and the people making those tone arms are saying, I don't need to put slots in my head shell because I've produced this perfect tangential tracking tone arm. I don't need slots to change the zenith angle. When in fact, those arms, more than any arm, need that slot, because if you buy a cartridge like this where it's off by 6 or 8 degrees, it's going to be lousy the whole way across, consistently lousy the whole way across the record. This makes people want to stop playing records and listen to CDs or something. I mean, it's just, so, now that I'm going to do more turntable setup seminars, everything has to be qualified and changed. It's very depressing. That's the last thing I'm going to say about it.
It doesn't mean it's going to sound bad.
No, and that's the thing about this underhung arm. I put in a V15 cartridge in there with one of these new wooden cantilever style, and it sounds phenomenal. I just wrote something about that. You can go on eBay and you can buy a used V15 with no stylus because you can't get them, and the people sell them for $300. And then you can go to Gico and buy one of these wooden cantilever ones for like $330, and for $500. I'm telling you, I was playing records last night. Not last night, 2 nights ago. It's amazing, and it's underhung. And I said to him, why does it sound so great if it's underhung by that much? And his explanation, and we're learning this, is that the elastomer in the suspension is not being taxed in any way. It's going to be relaxed and doing its job as an elastomer, as a suspension, without any problems. But when you have any kind of skating force, you are interfering with that elastomer operating the way it was designed, and that creates problems. And that's why it's sounding so good. I mean, this turntable sounds incredibly great. I'm shocked. So. All right, let's talk about records, though. I don't want to talk about any more of this serious stuff. Let me show these old records first. So Leslie had me go in and look through these old records, and when I pulled all these records out, she said to me, "Why did you pull all these? What made you pull these particular records?" So I just want to show you some reasons when I go to see collections or I go to garage sales why I look for records, certain records. So here is a Henry Mancini record called Combo. Does anybody know this record? This is like one of the best sounding records that you will ever hear, and it's one of the coolest Henry Mancini records because it's a small grouping, it's not a big band. So it's got Art Pepper on here, and Pete Condoli, and all these great players. And I look and I see, who engineered it? Al Schmidt, one of the great recording engineers of all time. I got to meet Al Schmidt late in his career, and I'm sorry I didn't meet him earlier on. If you see Al Schmidt's name on a record, the music could be terrible, it's gonna sound great. So I met Al when he was recording, he was in New York, recording Lynn Stanley. You know Lynn Stanley? Who? Mm-hmm. Okay, whatever you think of her singing, I'm not that much of a fan. She hates me, and it's okay for her to hate me. I don't care. I'm a critic. I tell people, if you want to be a critic, people are going to hate you. If you don't want people to hate you, be a publicist. Say everything sounds good, everything is great. Her first couple of records I thought were pretty good. This is on YouTube. She's going to hate me more, but I don't care at this point. I'm not saying bad things. The first couple of records, I was very encouraging, and I said, some bad notes. And she said, my mother agrees with you, so fine. Anyway, so I got to meet Al Schmidt through her, and I'm very happy that I did, and I met him. And Al has this, he went to my high school, as it turns out, which is amazing. And Al had this voice like this, Al Schmidt, hey, nice to meet you. And he gave me his card and said, hey, if you're ever in California, give me a call. You know how often you hear that? People in California, I know you're all in California, but people say, hey, when you're in California, give me a call. And you call them, they go, who are you? I never heard of you. But I got to California, I called Al, he was in the studio, he said, hey, come on by, I'm at Capitol. So I went by to Capitol. He was mixing Bob Dylan's first Frank Sinatra record. So how cool was that? I get to sit in there while he's mixing, and to tell you the truth now, he was also watching a football game while he was doing it. I swear to God, someone's going to sue me over this, but I don't care. This is true that he was watching football and doing a mix. But the record came out great. And then Al and I walked out, and Bob Dylan walked by, which was, I didn't say anything. I said, hey, Bob, big fan. What do you say to Bob Dylan? Hey, Bob, big fan, you know. So you just walked by, which I did. And he had bodyguards there. That was the whole scene. So that's one of the things I look for when I look for used records, who engineered it. So another one, I'll show you another one I found. So these are, this is a series that RCA put out in the 70s of film music. And these were, the conductor was Charles Gerhard, and this is the National Philharmonic Orchestra. And as I found out later, these were recorded at the Walthamstow Town Hall, which is a very famous venue for, Decca Records used it, and for small ensembles. And these were recorded there. And I look on the back, and it says, recording engineer K.E. Wilkinson. Now, many of you know Kenneth Wilkinson is one of the legendary greatest engineers of the 60s and 70s of that era. And he engineered these records, and they sound spectacular. And the music, if you like film music, these are wonderful records, and you can still find these around. And they were put out on CD, and the CDs sound terrible. But these sound great. And they're orchestral suites, a lot of them. So he goes and does a lot of, like, this one has the theme from King Kong, Now Voyager, Charge of the Light Brigade, The Big Sleep, The Fountainhead, all, classic movies, but with the music brought to life by modern recording techniques with Kenneth Wilkinson engineering. And these are phenomenal. I don't think, Leslie, you wouldn't have known about these if I didn't know. No, so I'm telling you, if you go out to look at records, look at who engineered them. At least you'll know it could sound great. And this whole series, if you find them and you like film music, highly recommended.
And that's a Dynaflex too, isn't it? The bottom one you had in your hands, a Dynaflex. Yeah.
You should speak louder so they can hear you at home.
It's one of RCA's lesser recording process.
You mean the records?
The pressing,
Dynaflex.
Dynaflex.
Yeah, so you're going to get some of that issue. You're going to get flippy, but it doesn't matter. They still sound great. For the same reason underhung record, underhung toner, it can all sound great.
Do you want to pass them around if people want to see the records? You can look at them. You can touch them.
All right, so then what's the next thing I looked at? I found this record, which I thought was really interesting. So there's a lot of schlock music in this collection. It's an amazing collection of schlock music from a period of time when a lot of people listened to a lot of schlock music, which I find fascinating. Those people are all passing away, and there's nobody left to listen to Percy Faith, Andre Kostelanetz, I mean, all these guys that produced this stuff, Mantovani. Although Mantovani produced one great record of music from the Civil War. That's an amazingly good record. But this is another one. This is the Duramic sound system. So this is a whole series of schlocky recordings, but the sound of these records, I know this is going to sound spectacular, just for the fun of it to play it. It will sound spectacular. And the Moody Blues, the first Moody Blues record on Durham has this same label. It was done. That record was done by the Moody Blues as a favorite of Decca Records as a demo record. It's one of the best sounding records. That record is.
You're talking about Days of Future Past, right?
In Days of Future Past, a British pressing. The American one wasn't so good.
Yeah, there are two different covers on the UK copy as well.
Yeah, so the original cover had this on the top of it, and the sound of that record is absolutely spectacular, and it's part of this Duramic sound system series. So I've never seen, there were so many records in this collection that I've never seen before. I mean, I thought I knew every Chet Atkins record ever made. I love Chet, but there were Chet Atkins records I never saw that were in this collection. And Percy Faith records that I never saw and don't want to see again. But it's an amazing collection of records just to look through records. And I realized last night that just the act of looking at records and looking through them is a whole thing that we like to do. Sure. For good reason. The cover art is amazing. Everything about what's on the back of the jacket, the whole thing. It's, even though the records are mostly schlock, you'll want to look through it. At least once I started, I could. Did I stop? No, she had to.
I think you passed out, basically.
She made me go to sleep. She made me go to sleep. Anyway, so that's another reason to do this. And
Did everybody want to see them? We can pass them all
I'm
around.
going to pass them around?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can pass them around if you want to. Or we can start in the back and go forward.
Then I found an Isaac Hayes record I never saw. This one's called Chocolate Chip. I mean, I've known a lot of Isaac Hayes records, but I've never heard of Chocolate Chip. So I pulled it out, we put it on, and it sounded phenomenal.
That was incredible. That was like our favorite record.
I mean, this record's
It's amazing.
Who engineered that?
I don't think it says. Produced and arranged by him, but you know, he knew good sound. All of his records sounded good. There are some artists who know good sound or knew good sound, and they know how to make their records sound good. We'll talk about that in a minute. So this one was good. If you see an artist that, you know, if you like an artist, everybody likes Hot Buttered Soul and a few other of his records. Here's what I never saw this. How can that be? That was, all right. Okay, then I pulled out one of these Marty Gold records. Marty Gold is from New Jersey, from near where I live, Marty Gold. And this is an RCA series where they, when stereo happened and they wanted things to be ping-ponging around, so it's a lot of panning, and it's just fun. You know, these are, I have a whole bunch of these that I have. They put them in nice jackets. Do you have some of these?
Yeah, it's a cool die-cut cover. And
Yeah, that's a good one. They're great, it's good, it's great. So I pulled this one out because, and of course this has the RCA Miracle Surface, and they even changed living stereo to stereo action. But you know, if you find these, they're $1, you have to get some because they're just cool artifacts of that era. Okay, let's see what else did I pull out of here. And Leslie had sent me some photos from these boxes, and she sent me all the schlock, everything. I said, why would I want to look at this collection of records? But as I started going through them, I saw good records, so I couldn't stop. This is.
They're all in almost mint shape.
Yeah, they're all in mint shape, yeah.
Almost all flawless in terms of vinyl.
So here's one of the, from the era of demo records I had never seen. This tops the list of I've ever seen of a demo record. It's called Zounds What Sounds, a sonic spectacular presenting music with these special percussion effects. Cement mixer, air compressor, punching bag, hand saw, thunderstorm, raindrops, celery stalks, the crunchiest celery stalks, 1,001 clocks, bowling pins, and many, many more. Plus, of course, 2 attractive women sitting on the cement mixer. I mean, and of course, that's an original cap. You can't make this stuff up. Once you see that record, you know you have to go through every record and crawl on your hands and knees spitting dust. Okay, now, so here's a series of records that I'm familiar with from Riverside. So Riverside Records was a great jazz label that was not well run enough to stay in business. So when they went out of business, I was a freshman in college, and the entire Riverside catalog was available at my college record store for $1.98 a record. Everything. Thelonious Monk, Sonny Rollins, all of them, $1.98. And even in 1964, $1.98 was not that much money. It was still cheap. And I bought whatever I could afford, but if I was really smart, what I would have done is gotten a job at the cafeteria and washing dishes to make enough money to buy the rest of the records. But I was too lazy to, so I got a bunch of nice ones. So at some point, I guess what happened is Riverside decided they needed to make some money by putting out a series of records of pop songs. So they went through the catalog and they found all these great players who had made albums that included some standards. So Sonny Rollins, Wes Montgomery, Red Garland, Chet Baker, Cannonball Adderley, Bill Evans, Bobby Timmons, Nat Adderley, they had all included some standards on some of their albums. So Riverside assembled them all into this series of great jazz artists play Cole Porter. So that's mainstream Cole Porter. So it's got Cannonball Adderley, Sonny Rollins, Milt Jackson, Herbie Mann, George Shearing, Wes Montgomery, good artists. So I pulled these out, and then I pulled 2 of them out. Then I said to myself, wait a second, this is the lady's foot, and this is the lady's... Is that?
Gotta be one on the left with the head.
We have to find the headshot. So there's another album in this series where there's her head. But it's great because the photographer took one picture and they were able to move it into two separate records. And that's something we...
That's budgeting.
Is that great? We discovered that last night. And to me, it's pathetic. That's my idea of fun. But it is my idea of fun. And it was great. We'll have to play some of those later. Okay. And then another, so these Phase 4 records, I'm sure a lot of you know the Phase 4 records. These are all great sounding. And some of them were on the schlock side of things. You know, Werner Mueller presents, brass in stereo, whatever. But here's Claude Martu conducting the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, which is probably a made-up orchestra. We know there was the London Symphony Orchestra, and there's the London Philharmonic Orchestra, which is a second string to the London Symphony Orchestra. I don't know what the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra is, but he's conducting it, and it's Ravel, which he was an expert at. And so we pulled this record out, and it's got good liner notes and a good picture. So, if you see these around, you're going to get good music, and you're going to get great recordings, Phase 4 London recordings. So it's another one. And then you find records like this organic sound. And I look on here, it's got Howard Roberts, who was a great session guitarist from Nashville, who liked to play jazz. And it's got a guy named Reber Hovde, who I never heard of, but he's probably some Scandinavian guy. And then there's Ed Thigpen, who was the drummer for a lot of great people. And this is the recording engineer is Ray Thompson, who I've heard of, Wally Heider Studios in Hollywood. So you see a record like that, it's going to sound great, which it does, and it also is. This is good music, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really good. Pulled that one out. So that was good. One other thing I wanted to show you. If you buy a record on Discogs and they say it's an original pressing or a first pressing, and it's on Columbia, there's a way of knowing whether it really is a first pressing. You have to find out from the people selling it what the matrix numbers are. So this is a really nice Duke Ellington record, and this is a promo record. It's got the silver stamp on it, which is cool. It's mono, and this is a great stereo record, but this is mono. And the number is XLP 52260-1C. So in the Columbia matrix system, if it's a 1A, a 1B, or a 1C, those are all original first pressings. So 1A was pressed in New Jersey at the Pittman pressing plant. 1B was pressed in Terre Haute, Indiana at Columbia's pressing plant in the middle of the country, and 1C is Columbia record pressing plant that was in Santa Rosa, California. And so I always have these dreams of going to these towns where there once was a pressing plant and knocking on doors. Got any records? But I haven't done that. And hopefully I will never do that. And then the system of Columbia records got lost. Then there was, after they went through J or K, or L, I'm not sure what number. Then they went to 1AB, and then it went to 1AC, and then 1AD, and then it went to 2, and then. But nobody. I've tried to find this information out from some of the survivors of those eras, and they don't remember. I mean, Roy Halley is the engineer who recorded all the Simon and Garfunkel records. Is a friend of mine. He doesn't remember when the numbering system went past the 2 series. But anything with a 1, A, B, and C is a first pressing. And then here's a Command. These Command albums. These are all great records. These are Robert Fine recordings. All the left, right, Hernando's Hideaway. Everybody who bought Persuasive Percussion. I mean, anybody who got into stereo in 1958 had to buy those records because they did that. But these also sounded phenomenal, and I'm pretty sure all of the master tapes for all these Command records were burned in the Universal Fire. I don't think any of them exist anymore. So I think, as a crazy record collector, if I go see any of these records at record sale conventions for $1 or $2 a piece, I buy them because that's the only way they're ever going to be preserved. Whether they're, persuasive percussion or good classical music. So these are probably good. depending upon who did the transfer from the original tape. But I bet you that'll sound good.
Do you have to sneak them into the house still, or no? Do you have to sneak the records into the house like you did?
Oh, me? Yeah, not anymore. Not anymore. No.
You can bring them in.
Listen, we have 4 dogs at home, 4 dogs and 2 cats, and 2 intact male dogs, and they don't get along. So I live in a gated community in my house. So we have to, dogs go here, 2 dogs come out, because of that, I said, honey, you can have whatever you want as long as I can have whatever I want, and it works out good. So anyway, if she won't watch this, so it doesn't matter. She doesn't, I think at this point my wife gets greater pleasure out of not coming into my room and listening to music with me than coming down and listening to music. And I say that without worrying about it, because she'll never watch this. She will not. I tried to show her I have all these, like I said, honey, here's a record. If I drop dead, here's a Beatles album, Rubber Soul. George Martin signed it to me. You should know where that is, because that's probably going to be really. I don't care. I don't care. Okay, so I won't care either at some point. So who cares? Okay. I'm going to move on now to something else. I'm going to move on to my adventures in record production. So, at this point, it should be like I should be winding down what I'm doing. Another couple of years of this, and I should stop. But I produced this record. I've talked about it. I don't know how many of you know about this record. I'll tell you about this record. So I went with my friend Robin, who imports Miyajima Labs cartridges. We have a friend named Jim Luce, who is a concert promoter, a jazz concert promoter, and he promoted a lot of great concerts over the years. And then COVID hit, and he lost his job, essentially. And then when COVID let up, he decided to start small and produce these small jazz concerts at a place called the Clavier House, which is a piano showroom. And they have a showroom, and they have a small performance space within this showroom. And so it was a cold winter day, and Robin and I decided we would go there and just show our support for Jim Luce, who was going to be promoting these shows. And we knew we would be seeing a bunch of young pianists perform, and it would be maybe a little bit of a yawn, but it would be interesting. So we go, and we hear a couple of people play, and we notice that there are microphones around and good lighting, and the sound was actually very good. And then all of a sudden, Rufus Reid walks in. And Rufus is a very famous bass player. He's played with a lot of different people, and he's got a lot of records out, a lot of great records. And so Rufus pulls his bass in, and then Jim introduces Rufus and this young man named Caelan Cardello, who I had never heard of, and my friend Robin had never heard of. And they start playing together. And after the first tune, I whispered to Robin, I said, Robin, this should have been recorded because this is amazing. And then after the first tune, Rufus says, we've never played together. They've never played together, but Rufus had noticed Caelan playing around town in small piano bars and clubs and said to him, we should play together. Let's do this event together. And let's get together and pick some tunes that we both know in common and play. And so about an hour before this performance, they got together and they picked tunes they both knew, and they sat down and they did this. And I said to Robin, he sounded in many ways like a young Bill Evans. That's what I heard. A lot more than that, but that was there. Very lyrical, very musical. He wasn't trying to do off ill-kiltered stuff to impress you with how wacky he could be. And Robin said, oh, it is being recorded. Our friend Duke Marcos is back there. Look at the microphones. And there were microphones in the room, for the room, and there were microphones on this Fazioli piano, and Rufus had a microphone. So the whole show was magical. And when it was over, I said to Robin, we have to do something with this. And normally what I would do is go home and say to myself, I should have done something. I should have, but I don't do that. But I did this time. I went over to Rufus and I said, Rufus, if this sounds good, if the recording is good, I want to put this out. And he goes, okay, then you pay me and you can put it out, which makes sense. So the engineer is named Duke Marcos, who I've known, because Robin had put some records out with Duke Engineering. And Duke was just doing the same thing we were doing, showing support for Jim Luce and recording all of these shows. And 9624 digital, good quality gear that he's got, good microphones. And Caelan was okay with it. And Caelan's father, who was there, was okay with it. And you'll know Caelan's father on the recording because he applauded a lot. And Duke did a rough mix for us, and to me, it was great. And I said to Robin, we're going to put this out, and I don't care how much it costs us. We're going to put it out. If we lose money, we lose money. But I think, Caelan is going to become a big celeb, a big in the jazz world, and will have made his first record. Just like VJ put out a Wayne Shorter record, way before he went to Blue Note and became famous. And that's a very collectible record now, and it's an early record. So we spent some time mixing this and equalizing it, and I made sure it sounded good on my speakers because I was paying for it, so I didn't care how it sounded on anybody else's stereo. It was going to sound good on my stereo. And then I sent it to Joe Harley, the tone poet, who's a friend of mine, and I said, Joe, it's just a bass and a piano. How would you place them on the soundstage? How would you do this? And he gave me some really good tips. And we went back and did a little bit more mixing and a little bit more EQ and got it to just where we liked it. And so, because you could hear Caelan's left hand and his right hand separately, and I hate those kinds. I don't like a recording when you sit there and you're the piano player and you hear the left hand and your left speaker and the right. I don't want to be the piano player. I want to be in the audience watching this. So we mixed it in a way where Caelan's left hand was in space behind his right hand the way it was hearing it live. And we mixed it so it sounded like you were there hearing it live. And then we thought it was ready to go. And then I decided I was going to send it to Bob Ludwig. He was retiring, and I've known Bob for 30 or 40 years, and so I sent the files to Bob, and I said, Bob, I just want you to have this, because I know you're retiring. I love this music. I want you to have it. And he got back to me a couple days later and said, I want to master this for you. I want this to be one of my last mastering jobs because I want my name on this because I think everyone's going to know Caelan Cardello within a few years. So Bob Ludwig mastered this for us, and I said to Robin, I said, we didn't do this for the money, so whatever costs we're going to pay. So Bob mastered it for vinyl, he mastered it for streaming, he mastered it for CD, and then we had this plated and pressed at Chad Kassem's pressing plant, man, and they did a really good job. And then we had Stoughton do the jackets, tip-on jacket. We did the best quality we could do. And it was only after all of this happened that I went online and found out that Caelan was pretty well known in the jazz community, and he was a finalist in the Herbie Hancock piano competition 2 years ago, one of the finalists. So he was, I recognized in my ear, something really good. So we put this out about a year ago. We pressed 2,000 copies, and we didn't care if we made money on it, and we did make money on it. We sold it. There's only a couple of copies left. They have them at Music Direct and Elusive Disc and Acoustic Sounds. And I'm going to put up a little note and tell people there's only a few copies left. We'll play some of this, and it sounds wonderful. It sounds like you're at the club. And Robin came over, and Robin is not a Wilson Audio speaker fan, and we played it on this Wilson Benesh turntable that I was reviewing that cost $370,000. So it should sound good. It does sound good. And Robin, who's from Britain, says, Michael, this is the best stereo I have ever heard. And Robin isn't like that. This he's gonna see this. He blurted it out. He says, I don't like Wilson speakers, but this is the best stereo I've ever. I said, well, obviously you do like Wilson speakers. No, okay, well, fine, that's fine. So anyway, I'm gonna play some of this for you. And then a little bit after that, I got a call from Patrick Leonard. So some of you know who Patrick Leonard is. You don't think you do. He produced all the early Madonna records, and now you're saying, well, that's why I don't know him, because I don't know him. Okay, he wrote Like a Prayer with Madonna. He has a whole big career with Madonna. He had a band called Toy Matinee. Some of you may have known. It's a really good pop band from the 90s, I think, or 2000s. He produced Amused to Death for Roger Waters. He produced the last 3 Leonard Cohen records, the great ones. He wrote songs and played on and performed some of the stuff with Leonard Cohen, and they collaborated on a bunch of stuff. And those 3 last records, I think, are You Want It Darker. You know that album? It's an amazing record. If you're going to go out, that's the way to go out, a record like that. And he wrote the music for You Want It Darker. So that's who Pat, and he produced an album for Elton John, Songs from the West Coast, one of Elton John's better. So that's who this guy is. And he called me. I'm on the phone with Patrick Leonard. To me, I'm impressed by that. And he says, oh, I just got off the phone with Elton. And I said, oh, me too, that's funny. And so he was considering putting out an album on vinyl of his wife singing. She's a really good jazz singer and pianist from Iceland. And he wanted some help with it. Bob Ludwig had mastered it, and he said to Bob, I want to put this on vinyl, what do I do? And Bob said to call me. So as far as I'm concerned, that's one of the last things I'll ever remember as I'm leaving the earth, is that Bob Ludwig said, call me. So, that's like great. So we spoke for a while, then he changed his mind about that. And then he moved to Connecticut, and one day he called me and said, I've made a record, and I want to put this out on vinyl, and I would like you to put it out on vinyl. I'm going to send you the files. You take care of this. Bob Ludwig mastered it. I want to put this out. And so that is this record here. And I'm going to play some of this for you. I don't know how it's going to sound on this, but I'll play it for you anyway. So it's called It All Comes Down to Mood. And it was Patrick's idea to put a record out that's like a prog rock record from the great era of prog rock, but make it new, all original songs and all analog synthesizers. And he's got, the bass player is Tony Levin and John Patitucci, both play bass on this record. Wow. He's got Wendy Melvoin, who was in Prince's band, playing on this record, Martin Barr and Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull playing on this record. And I think he told me that Jeff Beck was supposed to play in it, but he died before he could play on this. And so we're very upset with Jeff Beck for dying before he could play it on this.
Just like Jeff.
Yeah. So who else is on this record? There's a lot of people that you probably, like Aaron Sterling was the drummer, who was an amazing drummer. If you look him up online, you'll see who this guy played with. All great musicians playing on this record. And he sent me the files, and I played them. I'm not going to say, it's fantastic. I've played this at hi-fi shows all over the place, and when it's over, people, they go like, they put up their hands like involuntarily. It's like, I saw David Bowie in 1972 at Carnegie Hall, and when he said, put up your hands at the end of the show, everybody did. This record, I didn't say anything, but people were like, where can I get that? Where can I get it? It was great, and Patrick needed to hear that, which he did. And so, I decided the best person for this particular project, and this is when COVID was still happening, when all this happened, and you couldn't get a record pressed. You had to wait a really long time to get a record pressed. So I thought I would pull in some favors, and I ran into Don McGinnis, who owns RTI, at Axpona, just as COVID was about to wind down. And I said, Don, I need to have a record made pretty soon. Can you slip me in line? And he said, yeah, I'll slip you in line. So that was good. And then I decided that the best guy to master a rock record like this would be Chris Bellman at Bernie Grundman, who did the Wildflowers album for Tom Petty. And that box set came out phenomenal. If you heard that box set, all analog, it sounded great. So I got Chris to do it, and I figured Chris is right there at Bernie Grundman's. They cut the lacquers, they bring it over to RTI, they just drive over there. And then I have Doran, make sure that Doran Sauerbar, he's like the plating guru, along with Gary Salstrom, who's not at Chaz anymore. And so this was cut by Chris from the files. It was plated by Doran and pressed at RTI. And we got back the test pressings, and it sounded phenomenal. So we're going to play some of this. So I think we'll start with the jazz. I'll play a little bit of this.
A question for you.
Yes, sir.
With your amazing record collection, do you replace all the paper liners with, the fancy
Yes.
plastic, whatever they are?
I mean, if it's a record I haven't played in 20 years and I haven't done that, I don't find it and do that. But if I pull it out to play it and I see that I haven't done that, yeah, then I clean it and then I do that. Yeah. So this is a test pressing, and it's a record. It's been played around. I cleaned it, but it may have a couple of pops and clicks on it, but that doesn't mean the actual record does. So I'm just going to start this at the beginning, and you'll hear Jim introduce Rufus, and then they will play a Thad Jones and Mel Lewis song called "Mean What You Say."
What record cleaner do you use?
I use the Caelan Audio cavitation machine, which is really, it's a great machine. It's expensive, but you put a record in it, you push a button, and it cavitates it and cleans it, and it dries it, and you're done. And no fluids of any kind. So it's not drying fluids of any kind onto the record. And I also use the Kermes machine. Now, Charles is a character. He'll watch that. So I'll use the word character. And, but his methodology of, using it works. Do you want to spend a half an hour cleaning a record? Maybe not. But if I have a record that's really old that I've played for decades, like I have an original a UK pressing of Tommy that I love, and it started disappearing into the distance, and I figured it's wearing out. And then I had an original British White album. Same thing. It was starting to. I said, I'll try, Charles. I'll do the whole thing. And the first coating of that goat hair thing where the amount of white crap that was coming out of that record was frightening. And cleaning after cleaning, more of that goo was coming out of the record. And I kept doing it until, as he says, till you don't see any more. And then you just do a quick cleaning of it, and wow, the record was restored. And my friend Andre Jennings, who is an engineer and writes for the Absolute Sound, he doesn't put up with any nonsense. He doesn't buy into any nonsense. He's a firm believer that it works as well. But I only do that when a record seems like it's on its last legs. So this was cleaned on the audio desk, which I thought was a cavitation-based machine, but it's not. It's a nice cleaning machine, but it's not cavitation-based. Right? So. Anyway, so another thing I want to say about this record is that when I finished with what I thought was good, it was good. And after I got it back from Bob Lubick, I cannot tell you what he did, because I don't hear what he did, but I hear the difference between, mastering is like the last bit of seasoning on a meal. You shouldn't taste any of the seasonings. The meal should just be enhanced. I don't know what Bob did, but he was a mastering genius. And by the way, his test pressing of Led Zepp 2, of the special one that he mastered, his original white label test pressing is going on to Heritage Auction next month. So get your money out. I think it's going to go for $50,000. That's what I think it's going to go for. It would be kind of schlocky if it wasn't Mancini doing it, groovy harpsichord. But I think that's a fun record.
Yeah.
I think we should play the cement mixer before we have something to eat. Let's see what that's about.
And a crunchy celery.
It'll help with digestion.
Was it Mobile Fidelity? Did those early days, those original Power and Lightning?
Oh yeah.
Who was
That was their first record.
Yeah.
Because Brad Miller was a fan of trains, and so
Yes.
he recorded trains and lightning, and
Those were fun.
I have the British pressing of that. It was on Argo Records, the British.
When you do an intensive cleaning of a record, well, however long it takes, do you only need to do it that one time, and then after that you might just use it?
Yes.
But you only need to intensively clean.
Yeah, sure. As long as you don't start using another cleaning machine that dries a fluid that you're using onto a record. Yeah.
Now, you said the machine you're using now doesn't use fluid?
It's a Caelan audio.
Guess I'm not familiar.
I mean, the Kermes machine is like $1,100. It's really good, and it's cavitation, but you dry the record by hand. You can do a 2-minute cavitation and then microfiber dry it, and it's really good. Okay, so now I'm going to play Patrick's record.
All right.
And it varies all over the map musically. It's all different kinds of music, but I'm going to start it from the beginning. That's a good place to start. The first track is not my favorite, but it's Patrick's favorite. So that's how that works.
And did you, I don't know if you said, but is his specialty keyboards? Is that what he...
Yeah, he's a keyboardist. So like on this record, he plays acoustic piano, B3 Mellotron.
Oh, wow. There you go.
He's got an upright piano. He's got all kinds of he's got this weird synthesizer called a Boc. Well, I'll show you a picture of it later, but
Okay.
yeah, he's a keyboard guy. He doesn't play guitar. He's a keyboard guy.
Perfect for prog rock.
So yeah, exactly. And he wanted to make an old-fashioned prog rock record with no digital synthesizers on it. But it's well, you'll hear. Okay, so Leslie wants me to answer any questions I can answer.
Do you think any of your setup DVDs for turntables now, with all the things you said that have changed over time, it's
None of what I put on that DVD is true. It's all lies. So I don't know what to do. No, the basics are still true. You know, I mean, our friend Wally, who was a mechanical engineer, taught me what caused skating. It didn't happen to be true, right? As it worked out, it wasn't. And he was JR's mentor, and that's not what it was caused by. And there were other things on there that are not true, but the basics of how to set up a turntable are still true.
But it was still Malowitz that figured it out. His son is the one that realized. No.
That's right. So his son is also a mechanical engineer, and he's still involved with doing all of this. And you know, I made that DVD in 2006, I think it was, and I said, I think people should see how this is done, because they get instructions and it says, do this, do that, and you read the instructions in like 10 seconds, you know what you're doing. And 3 hours later, it still hasn't happened, and you think something's wrong with you, but nothing's wrong with you. It's difficult to do. So, you know, I borrowed $20,000 to make the DVD, and I said, whatever happens, happens. And I called up a company that specializes in instructional DVDs. And I said, so I'm doing an instructional DVD. What's the shelf life of these things? And the guy says, it's 4 years unless you're Jane Fonda and you have a workout video, in which case I said, I'm not Jane Fonda and I'm not doing a workout video. He said, 4 years and you'll sell a couple of thousand copies. I said, all right, I got to price it accordingly because I put $20,000 into it. Then the guy says, so what's the subject matter? I said, how to set up a turntable. He goes, okay, half the years and half the time. So it's 2006, almost 20 years later, it still sells.
wow.
You know, still you can get it on Amazon, and it still sells. So when these idiot people say, you have all this expensive equipment, how do you afford that? You can't. I said, first of all, you don't know how much money I make, and you don't know where I get my money from, which is, you know. I said, I made this DVD. It's 20 years ago. I wholesaled it for $15. I've sold like almost 19,000 of them. So do the math, you know. And then I was the expert witness for Quincy Jones when they sued Michael Jackson. That money was ridiculous. I mean, that was, you want to hear that story? Well, that story's on my YouTube channel, but then the pressure was on me to perform on the stand, which I did. But you can watch that on my YouTube channel. And after I got off the stand after that, I said to myself, I can do anything now, and nothing's going to bother me in the rest of my life. Whatever I do, and that's been the case. Nothing's bothered me. So. I'm glad you're not asking me questions about what cartridge to buy or what turntable to buy, because I'm not good at, I don't have lists in my mind where I can rattle off things like that. I'm not good at that. So, and the older I get, the less good at that I am. I need my crib notes for that. So I don't know what else.
Is the workout video in the pipeline? Is that what's going to go on?
You want me to do a workout video? I could. Sure. I could do that.
Lots of stretching.
I recommend Pilates. Pilates. The greatest thing I ever did was started like 10 years ago doing Pilates, and it's great. I think I'm in the best shape I've ever been in because of Pilates, despite getting elderly, which happens. You know, can't do. So.
I was just going to say, you gave me a great tip the other day on Westman's channel about never getting up.
Oh, yeah. People say, I don't like double 45s because you have to get up and turn it over. Most of the people who are saying that really should be getting up. They really should be getting up, yeah.
Just one other question. Since you see a lot of stuff that most of us don't see, what would you kind of say
Regarding music or other things?
regarding vinyl in general?
Yeah.
Where are we today? Where do you think we're going with all the things that, that you may see that we may not see?
So I go to the Making Vinyl event every year. Well, twice a year it is now. But this year I'm not going in the fall. I'm going to visit Frank Kuzma. I'm going to Slovenia. You know, the experiences I've gotten out of this job, it's unbelievable. The people I get to meet, who are way more accomplished than I am all the time. And the places they get to go is fantastic. So what's happening now with vinyl sales is the numbers keep going up, despite the naysayers who go, vinyl's dying, they're pricing themselves out of the market, it's going away. No, it's actually going up. And the demographic right now who's buying records are 18 to 24 and in the mid-40s. That's who's buying the records now. So it looks really good right now. It didn't rise as big as it did during COVID when everybody was home and had nothing to do but buy records. Now it's dropped off a little bit, but it's still good. And the biggest problem we have is a lot of bad reissues coming out. A lot of really bad reissues. The people that are doing it are not paying attention. Like when Joe Harley does the Tone Poet reissues, he's paying attention. So he's there when they master it. He's watching the mastering, he's listening to the mastering, he approves the test pressings, he's involved. A lot of these other companies, the major labels, when they started seeing, there was a time when people were doing these reissues and the major labels did not care. So, my friend Tom Beery, who used to be at Warner Brothers, wanted to do some vinyl reissues called Because Sound Matters. And the people at Warner Brothers said, all right, go ahead, do whatever you want. So he licensed Van Morrison, James Taylor, all these good acts. He knew how to do it. He went to the good mastering engineers, he got the good Stoughton tip-on jackets, and those were great sounding reissues. And then the record label started seeing that this was a good thing, and so they wanted to get involved, but they didn't know what they're doing. So there was a time when Bernie Grundman had the master tape for Kinda Blue, the 3-track master tape, sitting in his mastering suite. It was there for 4 years. And I'd go visit him once a year, and I'd say, Bernie, that Kinda Blue is still sitting there. And he would say, I called them, they don't pick it up. That's what was, and the Led Zeppelin tapes were all sitting there. I said, Led Zeppelin tapes were all there. I know, I call them and they don't pick it up. Now you can't get those tapes out of the vault anymore. So it's ridiculous. But it's good right now. The vinyl market is good.
I didn't catch that you rendered your own opinion on the sound of a regular pressed vinyl versus the injection molded vinyl.
Yeah, so the record they gave me, they had a record that was pressed the normal hydraulic press way, and they had that one that was injection molded. And they sent me it was a Kylie Minogue, and you could tell nothing on that record. It was, the injection molded record looked great, felt great, because the edges aren't cut. They don't have to cut flash around the edges. It's just, it comes out that way. And it's very efficient, and I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know.
But how did it sound compared?
They sounded pretty similar. I mean, the injection molded actually sounded a little clearer in some ways, but the bass didn't sound quite as good. I've been told that if you start with an analog, someone said to me, we tried this with an analog source, and we couldn't make a good record. But if we used a digital source, we could make a good record. I'm not sure I understand why that is, why it would be, but that's what they said.
Are they cutting like lacquers to make the stampers for the injection molding as well?
It's the same process. Same process to make the stamper, and then somehow. That's why it doesn't make any sense that you couldn't make equally good a record out of it with an analog source. I don't know.
Has the lacquer pipeline recovered from the plant that burned?
What's that?
The lacquer pipeline.
Are there more lacquers
Oh,
available
yeah,
now?
the Japanese company just stepped up to the plate. I visited Transco when it was in Elizabeth, New Jersey in 1986 when I moved back to the East Coast. I found out that Transco lacquer was in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and I wanted to go visit. So I called up and they said, why do you want to come here? I said, that's what I like. So they invited me, and of course there were no video cameras at that point that I could have. So I took a lot of still shots, and it was fascinating watching the whole process of these aluminum blanks going. It was kind of like they make candy, when the chocolate goes on top of the almond joys. It's kind of like that. And it was very cool. And then I heard they were moving it to Apollo in California. And the first thing I said to myself was, that's not a good idea to put both places under the same roof, because there could be an earthquake. Who knows? Yeah. And of course, that's what happened. And then there was one company left in Japan, and they've stepped up to the plate, and now there's no problem with getting lacquers. And they're better, apparently. So right now, the supply chain of everything is pretty good. You can get a record made in a reasonable period of time.
What would that be? Like 3 months? What do you call a reasonable period of time?
Well, like what happened with this record, what happened with Patrick's record is we got it plated and pressed really quickly, and then getting the jackets and getting the labels done was a nightmare, because The company that made the jackets, that designed the jackets, is called Storm. Storm Thorgerson, he's the guy that designed Dark Side of the Moon. So his place is still around. And in Germany, they're used to a one-stop shop. So like Optimal in Germany, you send them the artwork, you send them, your material, your record, and they plate it, press it, and make the jackets. But we don't have that here. So when he called me about this, he goes, so we're going to, I'll do my German accent. He says, so they're going, the company, RTI, they're going to make the jackets? I said, no, they don't make jackets. And they will make the labels? No, they don't do that. That's got to go someplace else. What do you mean? I said, no, they don't do that. In America, we don't do that. So to get that done turned into a nightmare till they realized. And we couldn't get the labels made. I mean, you'd think that the company that presses the record also makes the labels, but they don't. They're outside companies that make the labels. And the size is pretty, like when I did my record, I did this record, it was very simple. It all happened quickly.
Did you go to One Stop Shop for that?
No, I knew that Stoughton did the jackets and that Chad didn't do the jackets. I knew that, so I went to Stoughton. This is an iPhone picture we took because we didn't know we were making a record. We were taking pictures, and it's perfect. It actually works that good. And hired a really good artist to do the jacket, and I wrote the liner notes back here, and it didn't put my name on it because I figured it was stupid. My name should be on it. But anyway, this all happened very quickly because we sent out for the labels, got the jacket sent to Chad. Chad did the plating and pressing, and it was good.
So what are you doing next?
What are we going to do next?
What are you
It's
gonna do
5:01.
next? You gonna make another album?
Are we done?
No, you have
5 minutes?
6 minutes.
What do you want me to do?
Make them count.
Yes.
Make 'em- How many albums do you have? You see the pictures all the time online.
I have about 16,000. That's what I think I have.
Is that all in your space? Or do you
No, I have a storage space that I pay stupid money for to keep records. It's
Climate controlled.
How much is
climate controlled. It's a good storage space. And I don't need that many records. If I started today and started playing all my records, I'd be gone before I got through even half of them. I would not be able to.
I'm trying to keep myself.
But I feel my job is that I have to have them as part of my image, because it's an image thing, it's my publicity thing. Giant speakers and my name on a cartridge. I think I'll do it.
Is that they gotta fit in the house, and the minute I feel I need to buy a storage location, then I need to sell records, I think. And that's only my wife too, but yeah.
And no one has ripped me off yet, No one's come to my house to steal all my stuff, which is good. It may happen. I'm heavily insured, but, I don't care.
Michael, what are you using to keep track of all of your albums now?
It's funny, people come over and my records are arranged in a very strange way because the shelves are completely filled. Then I had to start having new shelves. I was not going to rearrange everything, so my records are basically arranged by race. I know that's not woke anymore, but they're separated by race. No, not true. It's just a joke.
And this is the Caucasian.
They're not, but I mean, I have my imported record, British and Japanese records in one section of rock, then my American rock records, then it goes into reggae and R&B, and then that's where it's divided by race. And then, although Stevie Wonder's in the rock section, and it gets mixed in there. And then there's a section for all my London bluebacks, and then it gets into the audiophile thing, all the RCA living stereos, that kind of nonsense. And then it gets into soundtracks. Then it gets into the MoFis and the DCC compact classics. Then the jazz section. Then it spills over to I don't know what that is. It's another room. I don't know what that is. Then it goes over into more of the new music, of Montreal and all the bands from the 2000s, Nirvana and all that stuff is another room. And then there's another room. But people come over and they say, "Can you find anything that's here?" I said, "Pretty much so. What do you want to hear?" And they say what it is, and I can go find it. And that keeps the mind fresh.
So you are the database, huh?
Yeah, but if I can't find something, it could be years before I find it. That's happened also.
I know there was a phonogram meeting where everybody went down to LA and they visited RTI, and everybody who went down there got a copy of that. So I know a number of people that have those.
What percentage of your collection is classical? How big is your classical LP selection?
I have a nice sized classical collection because when I lived in LA before I moved back and vinyl was going away, I met a professor at UCLA who had a room full of classical records, and he wanted to go CDs, so they were $1 a piece, and I bought a lot of records there. And I have a nice collection of classical, and I always listen to classical. Even the people think I'm a rock and roller, I like all kinds of music. So,
What classical composers or artists do you like?
so I mean, I've got a big collection of Beethoven, and I've got a big collection of Bach, and I've got a lot of Glenn Gould, Bach. I like that. I've gotten into I got into Bruckner. Everybody said, "Oh, Bruckner, don't really like Bruckner." But when Deutsche Grammophon asked me, and this is late in my listening, only a couple of years ago, I was just not getting any Bruckner because people said, and I got hired to write liner notes for that direct-to-disc Bruckner 7th with Haitink that they did, and my thing was not to be writing liner notes about the music; it was about the technical side of it. But still, I wanted to know something about them. So I got test pressings and played it. And after a couple of plays, I loved that piece. It was a phenomenal piece. And then I got into more Bruckner. That's what happens when you get into different kinds of music. Someone sends you something and you like it, so then you expand that composer. So I like a lot of avant-garde stuff, too. I got into Ligeti, and I like a lot of that kind of wacky stuff. I like Benjamin Britten. I like some of the British.
We need you to.
Are you telling me I'm done?
I think you're done.
I think I'm
Okay,
being.
big hand.
Okay, thank you.
We need you to rush, because you're gonna have to do this again in an hour.
I know. I'm bleeding. Thank you.
know.
I've
This is a
spilled
very
my
nice
I've
job.
spilled
Thank
my
you.
guts to you, and we're going to edit all the stuff out about.
I want to talk about something different. The universal fire, I don't think there's ever been an accounting of what disappeared and what is still around. Have you heard anything about that?
Of what's disappearing and what's still around.
The tapes at the universal fire?
Well, Universal's. I post. You didn't see the video. I got a tour of Universal of the Iron Mountain. You should go look for that on my YouTube channel.
All right.
They invited me to Iron Mountain. I got to go in there and walk through the halls, and they also sent me these presentations showing what was not lost. A lot of things that the New York Times said were lost were not lost. Okay. They were in the process of moving everything out of where it was into Iron Mountain. So a lot of things were out already when the fire happened, but a lot wasn't. I mean, almost all the Motown stuff got burned, almost all the chess stuff got burned. But there are also a lot of second generation half-inch 30 IPS copies that were made at the time and are overseas. So they're bringing all those back. So Chad Kassem's done all of these Impulse records, these great records that were supposedly lost, and they weren't. And also the Buddy Holly catalog. The New York Times said the Buddy Holly catalog was gone, but those are out again and from the original tapes. So a lot was lost, but a lot wasn't.
Okay. I'll watch your video and ask the next question.
It's a lot of fun. Going down to Iron Mountain was really fun. It's like
it's a huge place.
Yeah, it's outside of Pittsburgh, and it just goes on forever. It looks like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. When they go down there and they file away the Ark. That's what it looks like there. And now it's turning out that all the hard drives from the 90s are unreadable. So all the hard drives are stored there too, from all the music that was made digitally and stored on hard drives. They can't read them now, which is ironic.
Is it just because they deteriorated, or?
Yeah, the drives deteriorate, so.
Because I remember hearing about early digital tapes or whatever they were, or were they just hard drives?
Yeah.
That were,
So all that's left are the records made from, or the CDs. The CDs are deteriorating too, but the records made from those are still good.
The record becomes the record of records.
So there's a record out now that came out for Record Store Day called The Flying Burrito Brothers in Amsterdam. And that came out because the guy that produced it got in touch with me last year and said, I have this, the tape is gone, and I have one clean pressing of this record. Would you digitize it on your super system so I could have a copy? So I cleaned it using the Kermis method of cleaning the record. That was half a day. And then I digitized it on a good converter and sent it to them. And they put it out for Record Store Day. So if you buy the Flying Burrito Brothers in Amsterdam on vinyl, it's from a record that I digitized. They don't tell anybody that, but that's.
No, but I have there's a Mel Torme album called
Live at Marty's. There's no tape of that.
Yeah, because I bought the CD with DCC and you could hear faint.
And it's a bad transfer. I could make you a much better transfer of that. That's a great record, isn't it?
I think that was one of the best records he ever made.
I agree. And the sound of that record it's amazing.
You know, it's like he's in the room. So it goes for nothing, I guess. You know, if you see it in used record stores, it's like.
I have that many copies. I just keep buying copies of it.
I think that's a good idea.
And I give some away to people. I give away copies, but I should digitize that the right way and maybe get the rights to put it out.
Yeah, a record store day or something.
Yeah, why not?
Well, it depends on who owns the music. I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably the Torme estate at this point. It was on Finesse Records, which
Yeah,
I don't know who owns Finesse Records.
There was a guy's name on it, Norman Schwartz or something like
Yeah,
that.
I'm not sure he's around.
I
Finding.
think it's gone.
Yeah, I got to find out about that because it's such a great record. I learned about that from Jason Bloom, who started Apogee Loudspeakers. He played that for me for the first time.
Was that when it came out? I remember hearing it because I worked in.
Yeah, that was in the 80s.
It came out and it was
Yeah,
just.
it's a great record. It's got Janice Ian on it. It's got really good bass player on it.
Terry Mulligan, I think.
I mean, it's great musicians and a great club. So, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put it out.
Could you talk about cartridge life and when you should be aware to replace the cartridge and that kind of stuff? That's one of the things that's...
Well, so you should get 1,000 hours max play, but it's not going to ruin your records. If you wear out the cartridge, if you've got a cartridge with a severe stylus profile that's got a lot of sharp edges, as the edges soften down from wear, all that's going to happen is you'll lose detail, and you'll start to hear you're not getting all the transient clarity that you expect and all the spatial clarity you expect, and things will start sounding soft. It's not going to ruin your records. That's just what's going to happen. And usually by that time, the elastomer is getting a little tired also, so it's time for a rebuild.
Gotcha.
Or a new cartridge.
1,000 hours on any cartridge? 1,000 hours on any cartridge?
1,000 hours. Not from the day you buy it, but from plays. Quick, the clock's running, install the cartridge.
I'm going to Tokyo next month, and I'm considering getting one of the ultra-low impedance cartridges. Do you have any thoughts on that, which would dissuade me from this notion?
I don't know. I like to stay away from certain things. I don't know.
Okay.
Like, what should I buy? People say, which one should I buy? And I say, if you let me tell you who to marry, I will then you know, I can't tell you what to buy. I can't. I can steer you away from certain things that I know aren't good, and I can tell you how things sound, but then, because there's so many, you go to a hi-fi show and you hear so many different sounds, loudspeakers, so many, you know, I go into rooms and I hear this, and people say, that's a great loudspeaker, and I'm saying, oh my God, it sounds like that, I don't want that loudspeaker. But taste is taste in hi-fi, and that's one of the great things about it. Whatever you like is what you should own, you know.
Can you just talk briefly about your digitizing system that you have?
So I have a Links Hilo, which is a pro audio piece. It's a really nice A to D converter. And I use a Vinyl Studio, which is a British piece of software. And I just run a Thunderbolt cable to my computer. And now Apple doesn't offer Thunderbolt anymore, of course, because you get 4 years before everything's outdated. But I have a Thunderbolt to USB-C connector. And that's it. And I don't use any noise reduction. I don't get rid of pops and clicks. If the record's clean, you shouldn't have pops and clicks. Now, Leah will tell you, because he makes a product that takes care of that. That works great. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure.
Why not? He's got a product called Sweet Vinyl that's, it's got a good converter in it. And we didn't plan this, by the way. I didn't know he was coming. So.
The sugar cube product that we make it's always controversial, because when you have a system like Michael's, to digitize something and then convert it back to analog is questionable. But we have a ADD converter on the input, pretty good line stage. It's very simple, so it's on purpose. We digitize through a very high quality AKM ADD converter at 192K, 24 bits, and then we do a bunch of math on it. We put it in a buffer that's 200 milliseconds long. So when you drop the needle, there's a 200 millisecond delay, but it's not really relevant to vinyl. We then go hunting using some pretty trick mathematics for what we think are clicks and pops. And the way it works is that when we hunt them down, it's autocorrelation for those who have been through linear algebra. When we find what we think are the boundaries of the anomaly, we'll just call it, we cut it out. And then there's a gap. You could either flatline it, which a lot of people would do, but we actually continue the math, and we put back the waveform that should have been there. You can do that by, again, through autocorrelation. You can know what waveform would have been there, which is part of the way we find it in the first place. So the end result is it's super clean. Other than the A to D, D to A, the process itself, you can't really hear. The clicks just go away. And so the only tone color left is how well did we do the A to D and the D to A. And it works pretty well. And then we have, so the click and pop removal is one stage. And we have another, on one of our, what's called the Sugar Cube Plus, we have a noise reduction process that uses psychoacoustic masking. And it acts just like Dolby. It can take noise down 10 to 12 dB again without any impact on the sound quality most of the time. It's not as transparent as click and pop removal. We're not filtering. We're just using psychoacoustic masking, so we take away noise when we know you can't hear it. It works pretty well. You turn it on, particularly if you have 78s, it's incredible.
They do a demo at shows where they play a 78 and then they do what they do to it, and it works great. It really is good.
Does this just go in a tape loop, or does it go between your phono stage and the preamp, or how does it set up?
Either way, if you have a tape loop, which are increasingly rare, then it can go there. It can go between your phono stage and your line stage. We have a model of Sugar Cube that has a phono stage in it, both moving coil and moving magnet. It's pretty good because it's inside the Sugar Cube. It uses only enough gain to feed the A to D converter. So instead of all the gain you'd normally have, we have about 10 dB less gain, and it goes right into the A to D inside the window. So we optimize the whole pathway. And the phono stage also has bandwidth out to 60 kilohertz. And that, I think, is something I personally like because it captures transients really well.
So it sounds like it's a line level input. So
yes, or phono, and we have a phono version, but most people have pretty good preamps.
Can you also just capture a file with it up, like the way he was talking about, connected to the computer?
We have a model of the Sugar Cube 1 and 2. The Sugar Cube 1 just does the noise removal. Sugar Cube 2, the SC2, does recording internally. It'll either output to a thumb drive or output anywhere on your home network you direct it. And so it'll record both raw, which means no click and pop, typically the whole album side, which I encourage anybody to do because things always get better. And then it'll also output individual tracks, and it'll apply whatever click and pop removal you like. So it works. We've been at it now for a lot of years, and the software is very stable now, and we think pretty good sound. One last thing, it also does equalization. If you have 78s, in the world of 78s, they didn't touch the treble. They were just concerned about bass because of the groove width it would require. And so if you play it through an RIAA phono stage, you're going to get 20 decibels of treble reduction when they didn't boost it. So it's really important. So we do that digitally, so you don't have to come out of one filter into another. We just simply do the difference between RIAA, and we have about 30 EQ curves, the BMI, the various RCAs and Columbias of the day. Even early LPs have non-RIAA in a few.
Before stereo, there's a lot of misinformation about that subject too, about by the time stereo happened, everybody except Teldec, perhaps Deutsche Grammophon and Teldec, were behind the curve, no pun intended, of when they switched over. But everybody else switched over in 1958. When stereo happened, they all switched. And there's still people that argue otherwise. And I spoke to this guy, George Beddes, who was one of the last mastering engineers at Decca UK. And he said to me that everybody, all of their lathes were switched over to RIAA when they switched over to stereo, and yet there are still people that insist otherwise. And you say to them, you just talk to the engineer. Well, they just say that, and then I say, but the back of the London record says use RIAA curve. What does that mean? Well, they just don't want to fool you, and they don't want to confuse you. I said, what do I have to? And then they say, the Deccas and the Londons are not the same. The Deccas and the Londons are the same records. except the label has changed from Decca to London. Otherwise, they're the same
Both are
label.
made in England, aren't they? Both are made in England?
Yeah, made in England. And so I got into this YouTube discussion, no, Zoom call discussion with somebody, some audiophile club, like this kind of club, who's telling me, no, they don't even weigh the same, because the guy in Decca, he was cheap and he lightened the weight so that the records that were shipped to America were lighter, so it would save them some money. I said, just wait, I'm going to get a London, and I'm going to get a Decca of the same record, and I'm going to put it on a digital, can I use a digital scale? Yes, I put it on a digital scale. They weighed the same, except actually the London was a little bit heavier, because they're not exactly the same. I said, there, is that proof? Well, that's just that one, but the...
Oh, boy.
You cannot...
Can't get through.
But, yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. I'd be happy to demo it sometime. It does work. At trade shows, we have a particular LP that was damaged to begin with, and I further damaged it. So when we start the demo, we have the sugar cube on, and when I turn it off, you can't even listen to the record. It is just so because I scratched the hell out of it. And but it sounds okay when it's on. So the technology works. The issue is, do you want to hear through an A to D, D to A chain? But the math of the click and pop removal is absolutely transparent. So that was fun.
And a lot of the old 78s, they don't know what the right curve is. You have to kind of experiment to get it to so many different curves.
78 is a general speed.
And the speed change, yeah, and the speed is different too. So
wildly different speeds.
Indeed. You need a variable.
So this is all done in real time?
Yeah, that was the trick, indeed, including the noise, the psychoacoustic masking of the noise in real time and maintaining our fidelity standards was a hard-fought effort, but we got there. The way it works is if you have a 78, the clicks and pops are so severe that you have to apply click and pop removal, or the sound, the noise masking has no chance. But once you do that, and then you bring in the noise masking and you set EQs. I have Rachmaninoff playing his own piano concertos with Stokowski, and I think it was recorded in 1929 actually. And it was, remember, this is direct to disc. They didn't have tape in those days. It's pretty amazing to take away the clicks, bring down the noise, fix the curve, and hear Rachmaninoff playing his own works.
it can sound good. It can sound actually good.
Yeah, direct to disc. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
That's $25. Okay, are we done, Leslie?